A while back, I had one of those lovely moments where I heard somebody express an observation that, up until that point, I thought I was the only person to have noticed, which is always a refreshing and vindicating feeling. The exact quote was, "Can you remember the last time you spent more than 5 minutes on the internet without seeing or hearing someone pissing or moaning about how busy they are, about their busy schedule?" Now, this was an observation well made. These people are everywhere. Despite never asking, I am treated to constant essays about a person's busy schedule. I go onto my Twitter feed and there is someone moaning about how everyone is supposedly wants every second of their time, or online business owners constantly explaining away a delay in services because of their schedule. I reach out to someone I haven't heard from in a while out of politeness, and I get a huge defensive essay about how they've been too busy to talk to me recently, almost like they've been caught having a wank while wearing their mother's pajamas, when all I did was make contact with them. They're not being raided, they're not being pushed. Um, and also, not just that, but everywhere you see these memes, these screenshots of posts coming up with ridiculous ways of excusing a lack of contact. Sorry, I've been busy for the past 2 weeks, but I've been insert sarcastic or sly thing here. Now, I'm going to be incredibly controversial here and say that most people who talk endlessly about how busy they are bullshitting. They insist too much. These people always seem to find time, in spite of their busy schedule, to have arguments. Until, of course, they start losing those arguments, then suddenly they run out of time again and they go back to being busy. Or they always seem to have time to ask for favours or to get involved in drama. It's very much like that person who cancels a meet-up plan due to sickness, but you end up seeing them in the street later with someone else, looking as right as rain. Now, one of the reasons why I think people lie about being busy, um, the reasons vary. So obviously there's a bit of bragging going on. I have a life unlike everybody else kind of thing. I also think it's a very neat psychological trick. If you post online that you're incredibly busy, then undesirable people won't expect a reply from you. Whereas if someone comes your way that you do like and you reciprocate by talking to them, they'll think that you've made a special effort for them. And these days, far too many people use kindness as currency anyway, so that's something you can hold over them for later. Even though you're just talking to them, they'll think that you've gone out of your way for them. I also believe that people who defensively respond to your polite greeting with a busy rant are defensive because they know they've not kept in touch and think that you're there to call them out, even if you weren't. As for the online business people, I think in a lot of cases it's because they took money from a customer in the past, weeks ago, months ago, and are still yet to deliver the goods. And now that customers come to them asking them for an update, so now they've got to start making excuses. There are also many instances where I myself have received a rant about how busy someone has been as a way to guilt trip me into backing down in a disagreement or something, even though my criticism or problem with them has nothing to do with their busy schedule or how long it took them to reply or to show up at a meeting, a meetup. I'm supposed to feel, I guess, as though maybe I'm coming across as one of those horrible entitled people who expects all of a person's time and, in my guilt, back down and let them win whatever the argument is, even though I'm not that kind of person. It doesn't work, and to be truthful, whenever I see posts or stories, usually from women, about some creepy guy who expects all of their time in spite of their other commitments, my default assumption now is that nobody said that at all. They might have been asked for a bit of their time, but no way is someone asking for all of their time. Now, I mainly make these videos to rant or make observations about random things, but I do always hope that maybe some of my videos might provide others with some kind of food for thoughts. For example, if I post about a difficult moment in my life that I have since passed through, it's nice to think that there might be somebody who, at least one person who might have the same journey, if you will, ahead of them and might find my video helpful going forward. Just another perspective. With this in mind, I wanted to address anybody who might currently have an interest in someone, whether it be online or in real life, whether it be romantic or platonic, but the other person hasn't reciprocated. But they've also said that they also haven't said that they're not interested. Maybe they've given you false hope. And maybe every time you try and interact with them, you get hit with the wall of busy excuses. My advice, for what it's worth, however, might not be what you want to hear, but it's very simple. Give up, back off, leave them alone. They're not interested in you. And if they were, they would make time for you. You would be able to see in their body language or their tone if they were interested in you. Now, why can't they just tell you that they're not interested? I hear you asking, even though I'm on my own right now. Well, I can think of two possibilities. One is that they are the kind of person who knows you have no chance with them. But instead of telling you this, they've lied to you that you have a chance, just so long as you stay loyal to them and keep impressing them. These types of people will never give you the time you want to spend with them, not until their other options dry up at least. And they're simply the type of people who enjoy the idea of a dynamic, where someone else is more interested in them than they are in return. Now, that's one type of person. The second type, and I think this is the most likely, is that they don't want you around, they're not interested in you. Maybe they want you around, but they're just not interested in you. But they don't want to run the risk of being cruel. So they don't tell you that you have no chance with them, but they do try and sort of distance themselves from you. They're sort of hoping you'll get bored and give up eventually. Now, one of these is cruel, while the other one's a bit cowardly. Wouldn't it be wonderful if people just spoke the truth to people? These days, people only seem to give criticism in front of an audience or to show off to people or to be nasty. It would be so lovely in this world if we had people just come to each other privately and told people about their misgivings without exaggerating, without portraying the recipient in a dishonest way. Unfortunately, though, this isn't reality. But the truth is, there's not much you can do if someone's behaving this way with you. If someone isn't into you but refuses to communicate this, then unfortunately, that's their freedom to do so. You can't do anything to change this without becoming an abusive person via the very nature of your actions. However, freedom works both ways. You have the freedom to want something different and to go looking for the people who can bring that to you. If you want someone you can spend a good amount of time with, screw anyone that tells you that you're wrong or that wanting a bit of time with people is the same as wanting all of their time. Just accept that this particular person isn't interested in you, or at the very least, they're not interested in the things you're interested in. And just leave them alone. It doesn't have to be a confrontation. You don't need to leave ultimatums. Just back off. You don't even need to cut them out entirely. Just reduce what you're doing for them or the time you're spending on them. Now, some of them may realise that you're moving on and come after you with, "Oh, I was just testing you this whole time, and I was literally about to tell you that you'd pass, but now you've moved on. I can't tell you this, you failed." Or say you're just one of those people that thinks they're entitled to everything from me, or some other kind of manipulation. But that's when you know that they were stringing you along, so you may actually get to find out the truth about their motives. But ultimately, you should do this for yourself. Now, one question I'm expecting to be asked is, what about the people who are genuinely busy? Now, I know people who are this way, but unfortunately, my advice is the same. Friendships and relationships take time and effort from both sides. Whether you can't or won't put the effort in makes no difference at all. It is unreasonable to expect another person to stay exactly where you left them for months or even years on end. Sadly, a lot of people seem to think that this is not the case. But relationships and friendships are not about token gestures like the allowing someone to spend time with you but only for a few minutes while you're waiting for someone else to arrive, or messaging someone online to check in on them from time to time. And contributing energy in a dynamic is not a workplace situation where you can call in sick and the work just gets done for you by somebody else. Now, ghosting has always existed, but now that it seems to be happening more and more to popular types of people, it's becoming an issue that we're now talking about almost like it's an assault. In fact, I've even seen some suggestions that ghosting should be criminalised. Now, ghosting is no fun, and I don't deny that it happens, but truthfully, I do wonder if there's a connection there. Maybe popular types who are blessed with physical beauty or wealth don't feel as though they have to contribute anything, that their presence is enough, and that those around them are such low lives that they will accept this and carry the association, the dynamic, and all the effort that goes with it exclusively on their shoulders. But even us low lives get bored and start to want more. We begin to see that our wants are not big things at all, but yet we don't have them. So we try and communicate and suddenly see the effort that we've been waiting for all along, only it's going towards them winning the argument over us, or trying to bash us into silence with manipulation. So we accept that there's no point in communicating, and the only thing we can do is leave. But that's just a theory of mine. I've known a lot of people like that, people who didn't want me around anymore, so they cut me out. But instead of doing it honestly, they did it in a slimy way, slowly removing themselves from my life bit by bit, chuckling all the way because I was too dumb to notice that it was happening, or them having the thrill of power when I did notice, and they were able to successfully gaslight me into believing that it was all in my head, that they weren't cutting me out, I was just paranoid. And perhaps they would even begin to turn every single thing I did wrong into some major drama so that I would feel like a bad person, and that when we parted ways, it would have been my fault that things had to end, thereby removing the accusation of them being a ghoster. They didn't ghost me, they cut me out because I was a terrible person. And not only that, but that also leaves me with a debt of guilt that they can cash in if they ever need to return. And they'd go through these stages and they'd leave, but they'd never say goodbye, presumably so that if they ever needed to come back, they could just say it was just a break all along, and that I was a bad person for assuming they'd cut me out. More guilt currency. Um, in addition to these types of people, I've also known a lot of people who thought that one interaction was enough. We'd meet at a pub or a bar through a mutual friend, add each other on an app, or maybe they'd even be some stranger that I'd never actually met in person, like a random ad. And we'd speak once, but we'd never speak again. And then one day they would come to me after years or months of silence and tell me that they wanted something from me, on account of us being best friends and all of that. The implication being that I'm such a lowlife to them, and they're so amazing compared to me, that I should consider the follows you next to their name as some kind of grand gesture that I should be forever in their debt for. Now, I don't deal with these types of people anymore. I'm not a hard ass person, but I'm definitely more selective as well as trusting of my senses and signals. We could be two people that talk online frequently or meet regularly, and you'll find me to be a fair and reasonable person. But once I sense the interest dropping off and I can't see a way to get it back without the other person's help, but they're not providing it, I won't live life as the guy that keeps his optimism way too high anymore. I won't ignore all of the signs and focus on minor technicalities like, well, at least they haven't told me they're freezing me out. At least they haven't told me they don't want to associate with me anymore. If somebody came up to you and punched you in the face, would you react positively to someone who told you that you're paranoid and a bad person for assuming the puncher didn't like you? But it is an interesting thought and quite a sobering one as well, that there are actually in my life so many people who probably didn't realize that they burned their last bridge with me. They may even have the idea in their heads that I'm still sat around waiting for them to come back after all of these years. They may even enjoy the idea. They may be chuckling to themselves about the stupid divvy Englishman who they cut out years ago, but because they never said goodbye, I'm such a sad case that I'm still sat there believing that we've got something. But if they ever return, they will discover that I decided to give up on them and also give them space a long time ago. That when they finally reach out to me and check in on me, quote unquote, I just won't be putting as much energy into the chats or the planning or the meetup ideas as I used to. That if they come to bullshit me that the things I post are the most awesome things they've ever seen, even though this is the first I've noticed of that, or lie to me that they saw me in the street today and thought I looked hot, they'll find that my reply will be a very simple, please skip to the favour that you're about to ask me. Okay, maybe I might not be as confrontational as that, but I definitely won't be able to summon the energy because, quite honestly, I gave up on them a long time ago. Um, but not before they gave up on me. And when they start sending me a text or start whining at me in wherever we are in public, their moans and complaints of, I was busy this whole time, will go unheard. In fact, I switch off when I see or even hear that word. You make time for people if they matter to you. And if you can't, then that's unfortunate. But it is so unreasonable to expect people to stay right where you left them. Sure, moving on a bit too quickly can also be a negative sign. But to expect people to remain right where you left them is cruel. The word busy is not a get out of jail free card. If there was ever a situation where I needed to cut myself off for a few months from the people in my life to go and do something else, yeah, sure, I hope they would wait for me and be there for me when I came back. But I would definitely not expect them to stay exactly where they are, or to even remain socially celibate for my return. Because I guess I don't treat people like VHS tapes. Like, remember when you take a video out of the machine in the old days and you put it back in a year later, it would always be right where you left it because it was tape. A lot of people seem to think that other people's lives are like that. And it's quite insulting and incredibly naive. So that was nice actually hearing someone point that out because I've been thinking that for a long time. I'm always finding someone talking about how busy they are, and it was just nice to be vindicated, to know I wasn't alone.